the surface of the East China Sea.
Off the last scrap of Japan before Taiwan, there is a wall. Not a reef, not a ridge. A wall, flat-faced, sharp-cornered, rising in clean stone steps out of the blue dark. Divers who have touched it describe right angles, terraces, something that looks unmistakably like a staircase. And it has been underwater for at least 10,000 years. The structure is called the Yonaguni Monument. It was found in 1986 by a man looking for sharks. And ever since, it has split the scientific world cleanly in two. One side says it is natural, a freak of geology, nothing more. The other side says human beings shaped it, quarried it, climbed its steps, worshipped on it. And if that second side is right, then this monument went under the waves before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, before recorded history began. So the question is simple. Is it a building or just a rock? In the spring of 1986, a Japanese diver named Kihachiro Aratake was working the waters off Yonaguni Island. He ran a tourism business. He was scouting new dive sites, somewhere he could bring visitors to watch hammerhead sharks, which gather here in great schools every winter. He dropped down off the island's rugged southern coast, and what he found stopped him cold. Below him, in the clear water, was a face of stone, so flat, so regular, so deliberately stepped, that his first instinct was not interesting rock. His first instinct was, somebody made this. Aratake kept the sight quiet at first. He understood what he might be looking at, and he did not want it overrun before anyone serious could examine it. But word travels. And in 1997, the man who would make Yonaguni famous arrived. Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus. Kimura dove the site again and again, hundreds of dives over the following years. And the longer he looked, the more convinced he became. This was not a natural formation. This was architecture. Drowned architecture. Kimura's claims were bold. He argued the monument was not one rock, but a complex, a built environment. He identified what he believed were walls, a road, a kind of plaza, two flat-topped pillars, a star-shaped platform, even features he interpreted as a stylized carving of a turtle and the rough outline of a face. He estimated the structure could be 5,000 years old, then older. Some of his later estimates pushed the date back 10,000 years, which would make Yonaguni one of the oldest monumental structures on the planet. If he was right. Let's get the date straight, because everything hinges on it. The top of the Yonaguni monument sits roughly 5 meters below the surface. The base lies around 25 meters down. Here is the key fact. This region has not been above water in a very long time. At the peak of the last ice age, around 20,000 years ago, so much of Earth's water was locked into glaciers that global sea levels were about 120 meters lower than they are today. The coastlines of the world looked nothing like they do now. Whole landscapes that are seabed today were dry, walkable ground. So if Yonaguni was carved by human hands, it had to be carved when that stone was dry. And the geology of sea level rise gives us a window. As the Ice Age ended, the glaciers melted and the oceans climbed, not smoothly, but in surges. The land that is now the Yonaguni Monument would have been above water until somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago. After that, the sea took it. For good. Which means there is no in-between answer. Either it is natural, or it was built by people who lived more than 10,000 years ago. There is no third date. Now sit with what that would mean. 10,000 years ago, the conventional story of this part of the world says, scattered bands of hunter-gatherers and early fishers. No cities, no metal tools, no writing for another 7,000 years. And yet, on the Yonaguni side of the argument, those same people would have to have quarried and dressed enormous blocks of bedrock, cut steps, leveled platforms, shaped a monument on a coastline that the rising sea was about to erase forever. The mainstream calls that impossible. The fringe calls it the whole point. Let's go down and stand on it. The single most striking feature of the Yonaguni Monument is its main terrace, a series of broad, flat steps climbing the structure like a colossal staircase. Each step is level. The faces between them are close to vertical. And the corners where they meet are sharp, not rounded, not crumbled, but clean. Stand at the base and look up, and the human brain screams one word at you. Stairs. Kimura's argument rests on details like this. He pointed to the steps. He pointed to two great megaliths standing side by side, which he believed had been positioned by intent. He pointed to a long, straight channel he called a road, and to deep, narrow trenches with parallel walls that he argued no random fracture would cut so cleanly. He pointed to holes in the rock that looked to him like post holes, sockets where wooden supports once stood. And he pointed to the rubble, or rather, to the lack of it. If huge blocks had simply broken off and fallen, where is the debris pile at the bottom? There is one feature that comes up again and again. On the structure, divers and researchers have noted what looks like a carved relief, a shape Kimura interpreted as a turtle, and elsewhere a roughly symmetrical formation that some have called a face. In many ancient cultures of the Pacific and East Asia, the turtle is sacred, a symbol of the world, of long life, of the foundation on which everything rests. If that shape on the monument is deliberate, then we are not just looking at engineering. We are looking at meaning, at belief, at a people who came down to this stone to pray. And here is where the ancient aliens crowd leans in close. And honestly, I understand the pull. Because the Yonaguni Monument, seen from the right angle, looks like the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. It looks like the stepped pyramids of the Maya. It looks like the temple platforms of Southeast Asia. All of them stepped. All of them terraced. All of them an ocean, and thousands of years apart? The mainstream answer is that the human mind simply favors the steppe. It is the easiest, stable shape to build big. The fringe answer is older and stranger. One design, one source, one drowned beginning. Now we have to be fair, because there is a powerful scientific case that the Yonaguni monument is entirely natural, and its strongest voice belongs to a Boston University geologist named Robert Schoch. Schoch is not a debunker by temperament. He is famous for arguing that the Great Sphinx of Egypt is far older than mainstream Egyptology accepts. He is comfortable with unpopular ideas, but he dove Yonaguni himself, and his verdict was blunt. The monument, he concluded, is a natural formation. Schoch's explanation comes down to the rock itself. Yonaguni's bedrock is sandstone and mudstone, sedimentary stone laid down in flat, parallel layers over millions of years. And this kind of rock has a habit. It fractures along straight lines. It breaks along its bedding planes and along sharp vertical joints, producing flat faces, right angles, and clean steps, all without a single tool ever touching it. Geologists have a phrase for it. They call it the natural tendency of bedded sandstone to fracture in rectangular blocks. In other words, nature builds staircases too. And the geological case goes further. Look along the coast of Yonaguni Island itself, the part still above water. You find the same thing. Flat terraces, sharp steps, right-angled blocks of sandstone shaped by nothing but wind, rain, and the relentless work of the waves. If the monument underwater is artificial, then so is half the island's shoreline. And nobody is claiming that. As for the missing rubble, strong ocean currents, Schoch argues, can sweep loose debris away over thousands of years. The absence of a debris pile is not the absence of an explanation. So that is the case against. And it is strong. Most geologists who have studied Yonaguni side with Schoch. The mainstream scientific position today is clear. The monument is a natural wonder, not a human one. But, and this is why the story refuses to die, even Schoch left a door open. He acknowledged that ancient people, finding this dramatic natural formation, may have modified it, enhanced it, carved into it, used it. A natural stage does not mean an empty one. Let's pull back and look at the bigger picture. Because whatever the Yonaguni monument turns out to be, it sits inside a fact that is not in dispute. When the Ice Age ended, the sea rose, and it drowned an enormous amount of land where human beings had been living. We are not talking about a few beaches. We are talking about millions of square kilometers, coastal plains, river valleys, whole regions swallowed whole. Think about where people actually choose to live. Then and now, human beings cluster on coastlines. By the sea, by the river mouths, where the fishing is rich and fresh water meets salt. So when the oceans climbed, the land we lost was not random wilderness. It was, statistically, the most desirable real estate on the planet. The exact ground our ancestors would have settled first. Which leads to an uncomfortable thought. If there were early coastal cultures building anything permanent, anything in stone, the evidence would not be in a museum. It would be underwater. And this is not speculation. We have already found drowned human worlds. Off the coast of India, in the Gulf of Cambay, sonar surveys have mapped what appear to be regular, foundation-like structures on the seabed. In the Black Sea, geologists have traced an ancient, drowned shoreline, a coastline that flooded catastrophically when the rising Mediterranean breached the land. Off Britain, an entire sunken country has a name: Doggerland. Hills, rivers, and hunting grounds where Stone Age people lived now fish out flint tools and bone harpoons from the bottom of the North Sea. Yonaguni is not the strange exception. The strange thing is how much is down there. So picture the last 10,000 years from the ocean's point of view. Generation after generation, the water creeps up the valley. A meter a century, sometimes faster. A village moves inland, then moves again. Then the grandchildren move again. And somewhere in that slow retreat, places that mattered, gathering places, sacred places, maybe even the Yonaguni monument itself, are simply left behind. The tide comes in over the steppes, and the people walk away from a world that no living person would ever see again. Now we come to the hardest part of the Yonaguni story. The part that keeps even the skeptics honest. Because here is the problem with proving the monument was built. The proof, if it ever existed, may already be gone. The waters around Yonaguni are not calm. This is the path of the Kuroshio, the Black Current, one of the most powerful ocean currents on Earth. For 10,000 years, that current has scoured this site, day and night, without pause. Anything loose, tool marks on a soft outer skin of stone, the rubble of quarrying, small carved objects, the remains of timber, anything that could have settled the argument, has had 10 millennia of relentless water working to erase it. The Kuroshio is a current strong enough to move sand, strong enough to roll stone, strong enough to carry away an entire forensic record. Yonaguni has been at the bottom of a river for longer than civilization has existed. And this cuts both ways. Think about it carefully. The current that could have erased the evidence of building is the same current the skeptics invoke to explain the missing rubble. So we are left in a strange place. The very feature of this site that should let us settle the question is the feature that may have destroyed the answer. The honest position, the one a careful person has to hold, is uncertainty. We may simply be too late. The sea did not just drown the Yonaguni monument.
it may have interrogated it and burned the transcript.
There is one more thing worth saying about the missing evidence. Stone tools survive 10,000 years. Stone carvings survive. But the things early people built most of, wood, rope, fiber, hide, thatch, do not. In open air, they rot in years. Under a scouring current, they last no time at all. So even if a thriving community once lived on the dry land that became the Yonaguni monument, their houses, their boats, their tools, their bodies, almost all of it would be gone. Absence of evidence in the sea is exactly what you would expect. Before we close, let me show you one more thing. Not stone this time. Memory. Because human beings keep the past in two places. In the ground and in their stories. And the stories of the islands around Yonaguni are full of the sea taking the land. Across the cultures of the Pacific, of East Asia, of nearly every coastline on Earth, you find the same haunted shape of story. A flood, a drowned land, a place that was and then was not. The mainstream reading of these myths is cautious and reasonable. Floods are common, the stories are general, and human beings everywhere fear the water. But there is a bolder reading. What if some of these stories are not metaphor? What if a flood myth is a true report? A memory of a real coastline, passed mouth to mouth for 10,000 years. And then there is the story the whole world knows. Atlantis. A great civilization, advanced beyond its neighbors, swallowed by the sea in a single terrible day. Plato wrote it down as a warning. Most historians read it as pure invention, a philosopher's parable, never meant as fact. But strip away the gods and the moral, and what is left at the core of the Atlantis story? A coastline, a people, a sea that rose and took it all. That part is not myth. That part is the documented history of the end of the Ice Age. To be clear, nobody serious is saying Yonaguni is Atlantis. Plato placed his lost world in the Atlantic, on the other side of the planet. But the instinct underneath the Atlantis story, the sense that something was lost beneath the water, something we half remember, that instinct may be the truest thing about it. We did lose worlds to the sea. We lost a great many of them. And whether or not anyone ever carved the Yonaguni monument, it stands right now, in the dark, 80 feet down, as a monument to that loss, either way. Here is what I keep coming back to. The Yonaguni monument may be a building. It may be a natural wonder that ancient people found and touched and made their own. It may be nothing but stone behaving exactly as stone behaves, and we may never know which. But the question it forces on us is the one that matters.
How much of the human story is simply out of reach, not lost to time, but lost to water? We build our entire picture of prehistory from what survived on dry land. Caves above the floodline, hilltop sites, bone and stone and ash, in the places the sea could not reach. But human beings did not live only on the high ground. They lived by the water. They always have. And that means the map of our deep past has a vast blank region across the middle of it. The drowned coastlines, the lost river valleys, the sunken plains, where by every law of how people choose to live, the most of us once were. The Yonaguni monument is not just a stone formation of a small Japanese island. It is a question mark sitting at the bottom of the sea. It asks whether the story we tell ourselves about how civilization began is the whole story, or only the part that happened to stay dry. Before history, there was a coastline, and the coastline is gone. Whatever stood on it is down there still, waiting in the dark. If this episode shifted something in your head about how much of our past is still hidden, about how young dry land really is, then know that Yonaguni is only one site among many. The Gulf of Cambay, the drowned shores of the Black Sea, Doggerland under the North Sea, an entire flooded chapter of the human story scattered across the continental shelves of the world, barely explored. If you want to come along as we map what the water took, subscribe to Before History, because the further back we look, the deeper we have to dive. See you in the next one.